Hey everybody, Max Bultman and Corey Pronman from the Athletic Hockey Show's Prospect Series here. And Corey, two of the wild cards of the 2023 NHL Draft play in Russia's Lokomotiv organization. Forward Daniil, defenseman Dmitri Simashev. You've got them both rated really highly. What makes them such intriguing players in this draft?
I think they're two of the most high-end athletes in this year's draft. Boot is 6'5", Simashev is 6'4". Both are pretty strong skaters for guys that size. They both have good offensive abilities. There's a lot to like about both of them. I think you kind of can easily envision a world where Boot becomes a top six forward and Simashev becomes a top four defenseman. They check a lot of the typical boxes you would look for, and I kind of believe that if their name were Brad Allen and they were playing with the Kitchener Rangers right now, we would be talking about them as no doubt top 12, top 10 picks. Especially when you compare them to some of the other players in the draft class. I think they are that good, but there are more complicating variables there.
So obviously the Russian factor conversation that most people are having with this draft is happening closer to the top with Matvei Michkov. What is the difference in the situations here? How would you kind of compare and contrast their situations to Michkov's?
Well, for one, Boot and Simashev have more typical contracts that you see for KHL players. They are signed through the age 19 season, so you got to wait just 2 full years after they are drafted before you have a chance to sign them. They could obviously sign an extension if they wanted to, and obviously we have the war with Ukraine going on as well. But they have a more typical contract situation compared to Michkov. The other big difference is the talent level. I think both of these guys are excellent pro prospects. Like I said before, would be very high picks if you just look at their pure talent levels. But Michkov is a special hockey player, and there becomes a certain point in the draft, and it will happen very early in the draft, where the difference between him and the next best player is gigantic. I can't say that about Boot and Simashev. I think there will be a point at 12, 13, 14, 15, where the difference between them and the next best player is not gigantic. That probably happens closer to the 20s in the draft. So I think those are different risk trade-offs that teams have to evaluate.
Is it fair to say, though, that the different organization they're in as opposed to Michkov maybe makes that threat of the extension a little more palatable for some teams?
Yeah, because you look at the last first-round pick from that organization, which was Grigory Denisenko, with Florida picked 15th overall. He did the 2 years he signed, came over right away.
How would you contextualize kind of their production in that league? Because when you talk about the difference with Michkov, that's another one. They don't have kind of that demonstrated high-end production at this stage that Matvei Michkov does.
Well, the MHL team they played on, Loco, was the best team in that league. They played 52 regular season games. They only lost 5 games in regulation. And those two guys were the best players on those teams, or among the best players anyways. I would argue that Daniil Boot was the best player on that team. You kind of saw that this is a team that almost never lost, and then he gets sick in the MHL playoffs, and then they get swept in the second to last playoff round. So these were very good players in that league. They were among the better, in my opinion, players in the MHL this season. But because of just how good that junior team is, they distribute the ice time. The numbers didn't look that amazing, although Boot had very good underage numbers in that league. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that they are elite offensive players who will put up giant numbers in the NHL, but I believe both of them have good skill. Both of them have good offensive hockey sense. Simashev can move the puck. Boot can play on an NHL power play. He can shoot the puck well. He has good vision. He has good hands. I think I'm not overly concerned about their offense projecting going forward.
You talked about how those risk factors could slip them down into the 20s. Given where you have them ranked, does that make them two of the top candidates to be among the bigger steals of the first round?
Yeah, because like I said, there's more interesting. You look at maybe Daniil Yurov's case from this time last year. He was a guy who not every team had rated this highly, but a lot of teams had him rated as a top 10, top 12, top 15 player in the draft in terms of pure talent. He ends up going in the mid-20s to Minnesota. I'm not ruling that out. I think both of them end up going somewhere between 15 to 25, I would guess. But again, there are significant risks in picking a player who is signed and playing in Russia right now. And the fact that the talent drop-off between them and the next best alternative is not gigantic, at least in the first half of the draft, it makes it possible that they are guys who slide a little bit.